Welcome to the weekend wrap-up with Trevor Junt. I'm Trevor Junt, and this is Noah Boelter, otherwise known as Squabo Says. Today, we're going to jump into all the NFL games that happened this weekend with a 2-minute timer. With that being said, let's get started. Let's get into the first game. The first game is Seattle versus San Francisco.
And I am a diehard Seahawks fan, as many of you guys are. We needed this victory more than anything else. The only thing keeping us alive this season, after a 1-2 start to two teams that our division rival already beat, was the fact that we still have all our divisional games left. We have two this week. We started off hot, 28-21 victory, tying us up in the division with the San Francisco 49ers at 2-2 for both of our records. We started off terribly in this game. It was historically bad. 2 3-and-outs, an 0-7 start, but eventually even our defense picked it up before our offense got it together. We saw an interception by Quandre Diggs, but offensively 5 straight drives to start the game very poorly. It was a 167 to -3 start to the game in terms of yards gained between the two teams in the first quarter, which was extremely embarrassing. And it wasn't until a late drive in the first half where Russell Wilson and the Seahawks got their offense together. After the game, they talked about it. Russell Wilson went up to Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, and told him, we need to run up-tempo. They sped up the tempo. They scored before the half. The second half, we saw turnovers, or another turnover on behalf of the 49ers that allowed Seattle the opportunity to take a lead that they never looked back from. Trevor, I got to get your thoughts on this game as a fellow Seahawks.
Well, yeah, you saw momentum shift in the second quarter. There was like 5 minutes left, and then they scored on a pass to DK Metcalf. And then in the third quarter, early on, Russell Wilson scored on that scramble. Oh. Whenever Russell Wilson scrambles and scores a touchdown, like the Seahawks usually win. I don't know the exact stats, but it's well known. And then also, let's get into it, Trey Lance. Trey Lance came in for the second half because Jimmy Garoppolo had a calf injury. If you notice this, though, if you notice in players that come in and replace players, it's usually like an injury that happens to the quarterback that the other guy takes over. So I think from here on out, I think Trey Lance will take over and just be the future of the 49ers. And then one more thing. We're going to jump into overtime in this game. We're going to add a minute. You're good, man. We're good. And then let's talk about Shanahan, okay? I love Kyle Shanahan. Yep. But he did not do well with Trey Lance, which was surprising because, like, they have that one scheme of just the options with Trey Lance. But he developed an offense for RG3 back in Washington when he was at Washington, obviously. But he didn't develop an offense for Trey Lance yet, which is surprising to me because he's such a good head coach and he develops so well and schemes so well. What's your opinion on the Niners, Trey Lance, and Kyle Shanahan then?
Well, and see, I was, as a Seahawks fan, I was terrified. When the Niners had the 3rd overall pick, I was hoping they would take Mac Jones.
Me too.
Because Mac Jones is not mobile. And while that is a fit in Kyle Shanahan's system, I'm scared of the extra element that Trey Lance brings to the Niners that we saw as soon as he got into the game. They started running RPO, as Jamal Adams spoke about in postgame. That was all they were running as soon as he got into the game. There was the blown coverage. But what we saw and what I think you were alluding to is that Trey Lance still doesn't fully understand the system. He needs time to figure out, because with the West Coast offense, it is so complex. All the looks, they'll show you different looks and do the same things. It's something that you have to get a feel for. He's played very few games in the last 2 years, and so he still needs time to learn the system. I think he'll be just fine, though.
Before we jump into the next game, I do want to add one more point. So I will say it's an outside zone offense, you know, yes. And like they run the ball incredibly, but yes. they didn't run the ball super well in this game. And then none of these teams look too special to me. I don't know what you think, but Seattle doesn't really look like Super Bowl contenders, and San Francisco don't either. Okay, what's your next game?
Man, we got the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams. Let's stay within the division.
Okay.
And this was a high-profile matchup between two teams heading into it undefeated in the NFC West. Pretty universally accepted as the best division in football this NFL season. Arizona won this game in surprisingly dominant fashion. 37-20 was the final score, and what we saw was an inept ability by Arizona to take away the playmakers on the Rams side of the football. 5 receptions for 64 yards for Cooper Kupp, 1 for 6 for D. Jack. Aaron Donald had 4 tackles, 0 sacks in the game, and Jalen Ramsey had 5 tackles, 2 passes defensed, a tackle for loss, but wasn't able to get his hands on the football and force a turnover. And I think that's really what won it for the Cardinals. What was your reaction to this insane turn of events?
So this is a weird set, but Sean McVay has never lost to the Cardinals before.
Yes.
This is his first loss to the Cardinals. He's 8-1 now, so that's wild. Matt Stafford looked ineffective, and I truly wonder how this affects the momentum of the Rams. There's people that believe in analytics. I believe in analytics in football, but I also believe in momentum because it's actual people. You know, there's people within football, and then the momentum on the Rams. They have a quick turnaround to play the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football, and we'll just see how they play then. And then going into the Cardinals, they played incredibly. I did not see this from their defense. Their defense played incredible as well. Vance Joseph is their defensive coordinator, and they're making big plays. I don't know if they're just solid all around, but they make big plays when they need to be making big plays. Byron Murphy Jr., a cornerback from UW, who was picked 33 overall back in 2019, had his 3rd interception on the year, and he looks great as well. Before you move on to the next game, Cliff Kingsbury, man, he was on the hot seat. He did not look like a good head coach. They didn't break 500, but it looks like they will this year. What's your opinion on Cliff Kingsbury?
Well, and the concern with Kingsbury is, because you bring up a lot of great points. The concern with Kingsbury this year is going to be, can he finish the season? Because every single year over the past couple of years, they've had at least a decent start to the season. And it was towards the end of the season when they started to fall apart. So similar to the Las Vegas Raiders, who are actually playing while we film, it's one of those teams where if they can finish the season, if they can go win a playoff game, he's solidified. Okay, you've made that step. Even making the playoffs, you've made that step. But if they somehow collapse off this 4-0 start leading the best division in football and they miss the playoffs, he might be in trouble.
Yeah. Well, what's your next game?
Let's go to Cleveland, Minnesota.
Cleveland, Minnesota. That was quite an interesting game.
Yeah, and Cleveland, Minnesota, it started off, and I was excited because I have a lot of fantasy players on both sides of this matchup.
I feel tough for you, man. Jeez.
I was excited. The opening drive goes to one of my guys. Justin Jefferson catches the touchdown, does his little dance, and after he does that, the Minnesota Vikings don't score again for the entire rest of the ball game, and Cleveland doesn't score much themselves. So we saw multiple drives where teams were going for it on 4th down. We saw Minnesota going for it on 4th down. Everson Griffin got a sack, a guy that Seattle was supposed to have last year. And we saw Cleveland won the battle on the ground, 38 rush attempts to 23, 3rd down conversion, 7 of 18 versus 5 for 16, and rush yards, an astonishing 184 to 65 in favor of Cleveland.
I will say this about Cleveland's defense, man. Okay, they stopped them 11 straight drives. Cleveland's defense is stacked. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Greedy Williams, and others. I think that's an incredible defense, and it's probably one of the best in the NFL. Them and maybe Buffalo are up there. And then one cool thing about Minnesota and Cleveland. So you know Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Browns.
Yep.
So he was in the Minnesota organization for 14 years. From 2006 to 2020, and then they were iffy with Mike Zimmer. They almost fired him a few times, but they could have hired Kevin Stefanski. They were talking about it, and they let Kevin Stefanski walk, and then he immediately breaks the 18-year playoff drought for the Browns. So I don't know. I would just see Minnesota's ownership or GMs are probably pretty down on themselves for letting Stefanski go.
No, and that's what it feels like whenever Dan Quinn, when he was with the Falcons, if he were to beat the Seahawks,
Yeah.
A little bit of the same.
Dude, and one thing, Baker Mayfield did not look good either.
Oh no.
His passer rating was 59.5, and his QBR was 15.6. Obviously, those are not good numbers.
Well, and you've heard the concerns about when Odell Beckham Jr. gets into the ballgame. This was his first game back. And whenever he's in the game, Baker starts to force him the ball and becomes less efficient. Finally, he's back in. He's finally recovered from his injury, and Baker falls off.
Before we move on to your next game, so actually let's talk about this for a second. So I understand the whole OBJ makes their offense worse because people think they force targets to him. But I mean Baker Mayfield just looked off. He was inaccurate. He was inaccurate all game. Okay, cool. Let's move on to your next game. What is your next game?
Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah,
New
baby.
England. A rematch for the decades when two exes meet in their former house and they have to go at it. It was a beautiful thing. Prime time, Sunday night football. Unfortunately, some of the stars were out. Gronkowski out of the game. JPP out of the game. Shoulder and ribs, opposite order, respectively. What we saw in this game, it was down to the wire. First of all, how do you not speak about the conditions of this game? 61 degrees, 91% humidity, rainy conditions, 5-mile-per-hour wind. That came into a major play down the stretch of the ball game.
Foxborough, man.
As the final, what this game came down to was a 4th and 3, where New England had the ball down by 2 points on Tampa Bay's 37. And would Bill Belichick trust Tom Brady's replacement to get those 3 yards, run the rest of the clock down, and put them in position for an easier field goal in these crazy conditions? He did not trust his quarterback. Nick Folk missed the kick off the left upright, and because of that, they lost to Tom Brady in his homecoming. Trevor, what were your thoughts?
So I just find it interesting. Nick Folk is 36 years old, and giving him that shot and at the end of the game was wild. Mm-hmm. And then even if they made it, Brady had 2 minutes left.
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay.
1 minute.
Well, still, dude.
That's too much time for him.
You want to give Tom Brady a minute?
You're right.
What did Aaron Rodgers do? He scored in like 36 seconds?
37, exactly.
Yeah, geez. But the Pats don't look the same. They actually they ran the ball 8 times, and they had -1 yards.
Yep.
And then Brady broke the record, which is exciting. And then one point on the Pats as well. This is the Pats' first time losing 3 straight home games since 1995. So last week it was 2 straight home games, and from 2000 when Brady first came in, and then now it's 1995 before the Belichick era.
This makes me happy. That is a happy stat because those fans are so spoiled. I am jealous of you guys, and so I am fine with your pain. But another thing, because you talked about the rushing stats, and yes, -1 versus 119 yards on the ground. You're exactly right, 30 rush attempts to 8. So the rookie quarterback replacing the greatest quarterback of all time not only doesn't have a running game, but he outplayed Tom Brady in this game.
He did.
31
for the game?
Yes.
Oh, my. Just really fast, man.
No, in and out.
And then afterwards, he hugged Josh McDaniels, and he was just like whispering in Josh McDaniels' ear, having a good time with his old buddy, his offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. It was so icy to watch. It was fun as a non-biased fan. It's like, whoa, this is weird.
This is electric, right?
Yeah.
Like seeing him in the brown, which looks weird, but I agree.
Do you have one more game, or is that all your games?
That's all I got.
Okay, then let's hop into one game that I have: the Washington football team versus Atlanta. So first off, let's talk about Washington football team. Taylor Heineke, he's so hot and he's so cold, man. He either has a really good game or he has a really bad game. Sunday, he went off for 23 and for 33, 290 yards and 3 touchdowns with a passer rating of 127.1. He had that clutch throw to J.D. McKissick. You saw that, of course. Everybody saw that. J.D. McKissick with that yak, man.
Yes.
That yak.
I miss him.
Yeah, I agree with that. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, 123 and 2 touchdowns. I couldn't find the exact winning percentage for this stat though. Most of the time, if you score on a kick return touchdown, you win the game.
Yeah.
And they scored on a kick return touchdown to begin the second half. And then let's go into Atlanta. Atlanta is, in my opinion, the worst team in the league. Their defense is so bad. Their offense has some talent on it. The only bright spot in this game was Cordero Patterson, the running back, wide receiver, return specialist. He does everything. He had 82 receiving yards, 34 yards. That's leading the team in rushing, by the way, and 3 receiving touchdowns. But anyway, I think the roster's terrible. Their defense is just trash. Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones, and A.J. Terrell are like their main guys, and those are not a good big 3. What are your opinion? What is your opinion on Atlanta and possibly them getting the #1 pick?
Well, there's a lot that's involved with this. So first of all, I have a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans that are friends, and oh my gosh, I have won quite a few things over bets over the years. The season opener a year back, and one thing I'll tell you about these fans is that most Atlanta Falcon fans are used to the sports in Atlanta collapsing and completely giving up leads and blowing it. They had a lead in this game. They've led many games over the years, specifically the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, where they just blow leads and they can't hold on to it down the stretch. This is another trend of a losing organization. We've seen up and down offense with new head coach Arthur Smith, and there's a lot of concerns around this team. I don't think this team is going to be good at all. I agree with you. I think they are arguably the worst team in the league. It's between them, maybe Jacksonville's in the conversation. Like, there's a couple teams down there, but I definitely think they're one of the worst.
And then, so there's like 3 main quarterbacks that could be the #1 pick.
Yep.
Which by the way, is quarterback bias. I think Kevin Thibodeau, the guy from Oregon,
Okay.
I think he should be the #1 pick, like Myles
Okay.
Garrett a few years back.
Okay.
But there's Spencer Rattler, there's Sam Howell, and there's Bo Nix. So I could be wrong because I was wrong about Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert didn't look like anything special in Oregon, and then all of a sudden he went to the LA and he blew up.
Hey.
So those 3 names, Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell, and Bo Nix, if you had to pick one tomorrow, who would you have on your roster?
If I had to pick one for my team, or who do I think is going to be most likely? Either way, it's the same guy.
Oh, okay.
Spencer Rattler. I'm taking Oklahoma. I'm taking a guy that gets to work with Lincoln Riley because that guy knows how to produce quarterbacks, and we're seeing it this year. Even though Baker didn't have the best game, Baker's progressively gotten better every single year, especially considering how unfortunate he's been with 4 different head coaches to this point. It's impressive what he's been able to do. So I'm taking the guy that's worked with Lincoln Riley. I'm going Rattler.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're really fun to talk to, just talk to you about sports. You know your stuff, and it's impressive to just have you on the show and having you talk. So thank you again. Good job, man.
Hey, the pleasure is mine. I'd love to be back on. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Let's do a hard cut. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the weekend wrap-up with Trevor Junt. I'm Trevor Junt again. We've been over that. This is Sam Taylor. His @ is @BatSam155. So, Bat, you know what? Well, let's keep it. You know what, Sam? Let's get into your games, buddy. What are your games?
So this week I had the pleasure of tracking the Detroit Lions Chicago Bears game, Carolina Panthers Dallas Cowboys game, and the Pittsburgh Steelers Green Bay Packers game. So we'll start with Detroit Chicago.
Awesome. Okay, let's start the 2-minute timer.
So this is a classic NFC North matchup between Detroit and Chicago. It was Jared Goff, formerly of the Rams, against Justin Fields, the rookie Justin Fields. The Bears were coming off of a historically terrible offensive performance.
Yeah.
They generated just 47 yards. It's the 9th lowest in league history, in fact. But in this game against the Lions, they came out ready to go. Fields completed 11 of 17 passes for 209 yards, and David Montgomery, their lead running back, was amazing, rushing for over 100 yards on 23 carries. Unfortunately, he exited the game in the 4th quarter with an injury.
So that looked really gruesome.
Yeah, it did.
But what I read today is it was most likely a hyperextension.
Yeah.
So go ahead, go. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no worries. So that's good news for Bears fans because
Yeah.
Montgomery was kind of the driving force of their offense and really gave Fields the room to throw the ball well. Darnell Mooney had 5 catches, but he made them count. 125 yards, 64-yard long. He had this one catch that really stood out. It was a 21-yard leaping grab to set up the first Bears score, or just 5 minutes into the game, and that was just a terrific catch. So I'd recommend everyone see that.
One thing I noticed too, if you're a box score watcher, there's people that just like watch the box score after the game. So Justin Fields did not look good through that. He was 11 for 17 for 209 yards and a pick. But actually watching Justin Fields, he looked really good, man. He was avoiding sacks, very elusive. He was scrambling. It looked awesome. And he was throwing absolute just darts.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw like that one throw. So Allen Robinson was running across her, and Justin Fields kind of just rolls out and just rips it, and then dart right into Allen Robinson's hands. It was really fun to watch. And then with Detroit, I don't know, man. Detroit is just so sad.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell, he's fun. He's a guy that's like, oh, let's bite their kneecaps. We're going to bite at their kneecaps. That kind of guy. But they're just not a good team. I don't think they're well coached either. Jared Goff, he threw for 299 and 2 touchdowns, but it's just a tough situation.
Yeah.
And then the defense for the Lions is awful as well. I don't know if you saw that, but if I looked at their roster and I picked a player, I would not pick a single player from their team to be on a starting defense. Yeah. They're backups that are starting in Detroit. Okay, let's do Carolina and Dallas. That's the next team you had, right?
Certainly, yeah. So Carolina and Dallas was played down in Arlington. It was a matchup between Sam Darnold and on his new team, the Carolina Panthers, and Dak Prescott, who around this time last year had a season-ending injury, but he's back and looking very strong and healthy. Darnold was the Darnold actually leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns,
which is
just it's crazy. He's ahead of the likes of Derrick Henry and others, and he's just running all over the place, really using his legs and being elusive, similar to Fields in a way. He had a decent game, over 300 yards passing, 26 completions on 39 attempts, and 2 touchdowns but 2 interceptions. And so those 2 interceptions kind of did the Panthers in and kind of bit them in the kneecaps. Those 2 interceptions were by Trevon Diggs, who has at least 1 interception in every game this year. And the 2 that he got was 4th and 5th, respectively.
He has 5 interceptions in 4 games.
It's
wild.
Wild.
And then, dude, okay, so do you remember last year, before Dak got injured, they were throwing the ball 60 times per game.
Yeah.
So this week, they threw the ball 22 times. He had 188 yards and a whopping 4 touchdowns. So that touchdown percentage is 5.5, which is wildly high.
Yeah.
And then, again, there's a massive difference from last year. Last week, he only threw 26 times, and they crushed the Eagles. And then, again, with this game, 36-28 just does not tell the story, because Dallas dominating this game, and then Carolina scored within 5 minutes in garbage time to get closer. So it was actually it was in a close game, man. And then Zeke looked like his old self, rushing for 143 on 20 carries. He looked awesome. And then you spoke about Trevon Diggs with his 5 interceptions, but Micah Parsons, the first round pick for them, is definitely like the defensive rookie of the year right now. Him and the guy from Baltimore, I can't remember his name right now, but Micah Parsons just looks excellent at all the times. Dallas looks like Super Bowl contenders to me. Offensively, they can seriously just sling it and run it as well. I truly believe better offense always beats better defense, and I think Dallas's offense will carry them. What's your opinion on Dallas possibly being Super Bowl contenders?
I think Dallas is doing really well for themselves. They know how to spread the ball around. They had 4 passing touchdowns, each to a different receiver, and so they have a very deep team. And when Elliott said that the Panthers are a good defense, but they just hadn't seen an offense like us, and so that really showed in this game.
Yeah, it's funny because they were like one of the best defenses of the NFL going into this game, and then got smoked. Okay, so Pittsburgh, Green Bay. Let's hop into that.
So this was a Super Bowl 45 rematch, a game that was played over a decade ago. But guess what? Those 2 teams had the same starting quarterbacks, Ben Roethlisberger and Aaron Rodgers, 2 of the current greats in the game, going at it. However, Big Ben is not looking like his old self. He's making some mistakes, and there's talks that they may need to take him out by other pundits, not necessarily the team. Pittsburgh lost the game. Green Bay won 27-17, and Rodgers just had that dud of a game against the Saints, but ever since he's done really well for himself. Facing that Detroit defense early in the season really gave him some confidence, I suppose, and he went on, and now he's challenging other teams like the Steelers, who have a really good defense themselves.
You also you spoke about the Super Bowl. So this is the first time Aaron Rodgers has faced Pittsburgh since 2010, the Super Bowl. They faced the Steelers faced the Packers in 2017, but that's the year that he broke his collarbone.
Yeah.
And then Green Bay, if you watch the game, Green Bay didn't look very incredible or anything like that. I thought, at least, but Pittsburgh just looked really bad.
Yeah.
Their defense is supposed to be one of the best in the league, but I think they have 8 starters that are injured, something like that. It's incredible how rough they've had it with injuries. And then Big Ben, they just need to move past him, in my opinion. They have Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins is not that good, but I mean, give the guy a shot, I guess. He didn't look he threw for 50 touchdowns at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Big Ben just can't really do anything. What more do you have on that game?
Randall Cobb came back to Green Bay this year,
man.
and he trusts Rodgers, and the Packers trust him, and it's just been a really good matchup. He had in this game, he had 5 catches for 69 yards, 2 touchdowns, and doing really well for himself and his team.
Yeah, and also Najee, on the Steelers side, Najee Harris looks like actually a good first round pick. People argue it's bad to pick running backs with the first round pick. which I also argue for. I think he should wait till the second round at least. But he had 14 receptions last week, and in this game he had 6 receptions for 29 yards, at 62 rushing yards and a touchdown. So I mean, he's at least a bright spot on Pittsburgh and their offense especially, because their offense is rough. Let's hop into one of the games that I covered. Let's go into, let's say, Indianapolis, Miami. Okay. So the Colts got their first win of the season. Oh, I need to start the timer. The Colts got their first win of the season. I think with a mixture of Carson Wentz being healthy and then Frank Reich being the head coach, it's truly nasty. I like Frank Reich, and I think Carson Wentz works well in a Frank Reich offense. After they got going in the late second quarter, their offense was just a steam train. They didn't score anything, I think, for most of the first half, and then after the second quarter, they just scored and scored and scored. Wentz went 24 for 32, 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mo Alley Cox had 2 of those touchdowns, both of those touchdowns. Do you know how tall Mo Alley Cox is?
No, I don't.
He is 6'6".
Wow.
So he's a monster. One of the touchdowns that you saw, he literally was just standing, didn't even jump, and just kind of reached over the cornerback and just grabbed the ball. It was funny. And then also, Indianapolis is 1-3 right now, but they're still in contention to win their division because their division is so bad.
Yeah.
So they're in the AFC South with Houston, with Jacksonville, and with the Titans, and they could possibly win that division, which is crazy because they started off 0-3, you know.
Yeah.
And then Miami was terrible. They looked terrified to throw the ball, not because Jacoby Brissett was in the game in particular, but I think because their offense is just so bad. They picked Austin Jackson in the first round. I think it was like 16th overall a few years ago, and he's just an awful left tackle. I think he might be the worst in the league. Their offensive line is just horrid. What's your opinion on Indianapolis possibly winning the division or even making the playoffs?
I think the Colts have what it takes. However, the one performance that that they got kind of steamrolled by the Hawks in Week 1, whereas the Titans were able to come into Seattle and beat them. However, on a total flip of script, the Titans I don't think did well this week, and so lost to the Jets, I think, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see how those opponents interact, and once we get the Colts and Titans head on, it's going to be an interesting game.
Well, awesome, Sam. I think that's all we'll cover. Thank you for coming on the show. Again, this is Sam Taylor. It's at BatSam155. Follow him and check out some of his content. Thank you very much, Sam. Good job, buddy.
Thank you, Trevor.
Awesome. You did a great job, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you had good notes and everything. Oh, my bad. Let's do a cut. Ready? Hard cut. 3, 2, 1. What?
Dude, he's been doing this all night. He's just been coming out here and coming around and just staring at us back there.
So this is gonna be the show. Our producer's just staring at us for no reason. He's not saying anything. He's just staring.
Yeah.
There's no reason to.
Mm-hmm.
Just staring.
Man, look at this guy.
Look at Alex. Jeez.
He's got a nice festive mask on.
Yeah, it's not even, bro. We're not even close to Halloween. He's not gonna talk. He's just gonna stare. Okay. Let's get into the next games. Okay. Okay, Derek. This is Derek Joseph. His @ is @DerekJoseph98. Let's get into your games.
All right. Well, the first one I got on the slate here is the game that nobody asked me to talk about, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's the Texans versus the Bills. This game, it started out pretty good for the Texans actually, because the first play of the game was an interception by Houston. But that was the only thing that went right for Houston in this game. Nothing was good about it. Josh Allen just had a heyday against these guys, going 20 for 29, 248 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then Dawson Knox getting 5 receptions for 2 touchdowns also.
Which, by the way, helped my fantasy team because he was going against one of my rivals. So that was nice.
Yeah.
That came out of nowhere.
Yeah, the thing that didn't help me in my fantasy league was that the Bills' defense forcing 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions, 1 fumble, and 3 sacks. That gave them a good 20 spot against me, but I still came out on top for the first time this week, so that's good. But just every single time the Texans tried to do anything in this game, it was it was just all Buffalo all the time in this game. Like, just every time they got it, it was a turnover, and then they either got a turnover, sack, or fumble. Just, it was never good for Texas in this game, and they got a lot of issues to work out right now.
To talk about Buffalo, man, Buffalo is so freaking good. It was an all-out smoke show by the Bills. So the Bills also held them to 109 yards. Houston had a total of 109 yards in the entire game. That's insane. And then they're absolute Super Bowl contenders, right?
Yo, absolutely.
Are they the favorites?
I don't know about the favorites, but they're definitely up there. The Bills are always a team I love to pay attention to because I got an uncle from Buffalo. He makes me some delicious buffalo wings anytime anything good with Buffalo happens. So I've just always had a special spot in my heart for those guys. And Josh Allen is earning every penny that he's getting with that new contract he signed this offseason. So it's going to be a fun season with these guys.
And also, Buffalo plays Kansas City next week, so we'll see how actually good they are, you know?
Yeah.
Their defense handled Houston, obviously Davis Mills. I mean, anytime Davis Mills is your quarterback, you're going to have a rough time.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, Buffalo looked amazing.
Speaking of Kansas City, that brings us to our next game. The Chiefs versus the Eagles, a 42-30 victory for the Chiefs in a very tight and contested game, I'd say. Patrick Mahomes going for 5 touchdowns in this game, that was just ridiculous. This guy's just he's incredible. And Tyreek Hill helping my fantasy team out with putting up almost 50 points.
Or something like 47?
47.
Yeah.
47 points with 3 touchdowns. Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting one crazy shovel pass touchdown, and then I think it was Jody Forston. I think he caught an underhanded pass. I may have gotten those two switched up.
No, it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire who got the underhand.
Yeah, he got Patrick Mahomes scored a touchdown with 3 different types of throws in this game.
I think I know what you're talking about, though. So there was a play where Travis Kelce looked at the huddle and was looking at Patrick Mahomes and was yelling at Patrick Mahomes. And he's going, "What's going on? What's going on?" and trying to fake him out. And Patrick Mahomes was yelling at him. And then they snapped the ball, and then he passed the ball right to the other tight end. So it was a trick play.
Yeah.
That was crazy. That was fun.
Yeah, it was this was an incredible game to watch, and not to be outdone, but Jalen Hurts also had himself a day today.
Yeah.
Even with I watched this game, and it seemed like every time there was an offensive snap for the Eagles where Jalen Hurts had the ball, the Eagles' offensive line just let every single defensive lineman the Chiefs had just get through that line. But what Jalen Hurts was able to do was just keep his presence and poise in the pocket, and he just threw that ball down the field. It was I've never seen anything like that. Even watching Russ with bad offensive lines throughout the years, I've never seen somebody get the ball out that fast, being under that much pressure in a game.
With Kansas City, so they started off 1-2. You know, the media was freaking out. Everybody was freaking out. Kansas City's in trouble. The defense, the NFL defenses have figured out Patrick Mahomes. That's what they were saying. I was like, this isn't real. Come on. Whenever you're Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, you're going to be fine. You know, they're going to figure stuff out. And also, they don't really need to change their offense because they have Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Patrick Mahomes. And then one more stat on this game before we go into the other game. This was a very cool stat to me. This is the 4th time in NFL history that there was no punts in a game. So there was no punts at all in this game. The Chiefs scored touchdowns on 6 of their 7 drives, and the other one was an interception. And then the Eagles just had some mistakes like turnover on downs and stuff like that. But again, no punt. 4th time in NFL history with no punts.
Oh, I got another stat for you. So Andy Reid just won his 100th game with the Chiefs after winning 100 games with the Eagles as well. And how fitting is it that he gets this win against his former team?
Against the Eagles. That was awesome.
Yeah. And this will bring us to our next game. The Titans versus the Jets. Surprisingly, I thought when I picked this game, I was just going to be talking about how Derrick Henry ran for 500 yards against the New York Jets, but it didn't happen today, or on Sunday. It was just it was a very surprising performance by everybody on the New York Jets side. Zach Wilson had his best game as a starter so far, throwing only 1 interception, which compared to his 3 a game he was averaging earlier, that's a big improvement. Going 21 of 34 for 297 yards. I mean, you can't really ask for much more from a guy. And I was very impressed with the New York defense in this game as well.
You spoke about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry still had an incredible game. 33 carries, 157, and a touchdown, and also 2 receptions for 20 yards. I didn't have A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, so I mean everybody was hyping up, oh, they're going to run Derrick Henry 1,000 times, you know. And they ran him 33 times. That's a lot.
Yeah, but a big key in this game for the New York Jets win was the fact that they stopped them in the red zone multiple times.
My goodness.
This game could have been a blowout by Tennessee, but they just couldn't do it. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen. They were just stopping them in the red zone multiple times. They had them put up 9 points in every stop that they had, and that gave Zach Wilson a chance to get the Jets back into this game, because he did have to make a comeback, and it was very impressive. Like there's a lot of questionable things going on right now with this team, you know, the coaching and all this other stuff. Like their coaching, like in overtime, I wasn't impressed by it really, because they should have just ran it on 3rd and goal, but then they kicked the field goal, and I don't ever like having the option of giving your ball back up to the other team. It doesn't usually bode well for you if you got Derrick Henry on the other side in a weak defense. So
who made that mistake? That was the Ravens that made the mistake, something like that last year, or maybe I don't remember who it was, but somebody made a mistake like that, and they just gave the ball back to Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry scored. You know.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the division for a second. So the division is so bad. So it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Tennessee Titans. The Titans lead that division at 2-2. So that's anybody's game.
Yeah, we might have a new NFC East on our hands
Apparently. they don't. I don't think anybody needs that many wins to win a division. Like maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah, like it's going to be interesting. I'm glad the Seahawks are playing that division this year. I gotta say.
Okay, and then I have two more games that we'll talk about. Let's talk about the Baltimore and Denver game. So Lamar looked good. People make jokes about Lamar. They call him a running back, you know. Lamar showed that he can pass the ball for years now and looked beautiful in this game. He had 316 yards. I don't know if you saw that pass to Marquise Blair. Did you see that pass?
I didn't really get to see this game as much, so tell me about it.
There was a 49-yard pass. Beautiful lob. And Marquise Blair just lays out for the ball. And dude, you got to check it out on YouTube. It is so sick.
I will.
And then I thought Baltimore would pound the ball down Denver's throats, but they didn't. It might be because of the running back situation. The running backs for Baltimore were Latavius Murray, Le'Veon Bell, and Devonta Freeman today on Sunday. And then the defense looked great. They had 5 sacks and 11 quarterback hits. Odafe Owe, their number 1 pick, is looking like a real contender for the defensive rookie of the year. With Micah Parsons as well, who's on the Cowboys. He's a blast to watch, by the way. He's an athletic freak, man. He's just so much fun.
Well, one thing I'll say about Baltimore is that you can't ever count them out in the regular season. These guys are just they're so good in the regular season.
What are you saying about the postseason?
They're questionable in the postseason. Okay. I have yet to see Lamar really have that great of a game in the postseason. I want him to take that next step. Like, I like Lamar Jackson. I wasn't too keen on him at first, but then when he had his MVP year, my mind changed about him, and I used to be one of those doubters on him, but now I see a lot in him. I like what I see. So I want him to be good, but just like this team just needs to take that next step when it comes to playoff time.
So then let's talk about Denver. Teddy Bridgewater got injured, and Drew Lock came in. Drew Lock is wildly irresponsible with the ball. Let's keep in mind, Denver decided to pass on Justin Fields and took Patrick Surtain II, who does look pretty good. He looked great, but that's not a franchise quarterback, you know? That's a corner. So they should have picked Justin Fields, in my opinion. Teddy Bridgewater is a bridge quarterback. He has a bridge in his name.
Yeah.
But Denver also had 8 starters out, and potentially 19 because Patrick Surtain actually had a chest injury.
Well, you were talking about the Denver Broncos. The saddest part about the Denver Broncos is that their baseball team, the Colorado Rockies, have drafted better quarterbacks than the Broncos have in the past.
They have.
They've drafted Russell Wilson, and I think Michael Vick might be on that list too. So, like, whoever's drafting quarterbacks in the Colorado Rockies office, like that's the guy that needs to pick your quarterbacks because they have just not gotten it right for years.
He needs to take over, man. Okay, and then the final game that we'll talk about here is the New York Giants versus the New Orleans Saints. This game was awesome. I don't know if you saw some of the highlights, but it went into overtime. The game ended 27-21. The Giants won over New Orleans. And Saquon is looking like a real Saquon again. People are concerned after his injuries, but he had 52 rushing yards and a touchdown. That was the game-winning touchdown, by the way. And then had 74 receiving yards and a touchdown. And then Daniel Jones. Okay, I might be one of the biggest Daniel Jones haters. I do not like the way he plays. His pocket presence is awful, and his decision-making is just not good. But in this game, he looked great. He had a career-high 402 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 1 interception. I don't count the interception. Interceptions are a fickle stat, okay? It's like give or take, because this interception will go down on his stat record, but it was a Hail Mary to end the second half. That's what happened. That's how the interception happened. Yeah. And then Kenny Golladay looked great. He had 116 yards. Kadarius Toney, who was the meme, by the way, he was the guy that was like, oh, you have more yards than Kadarius Toney in the NFL, because he had negative 2 yards to open his career. And then he had 78 yards, and he looked really explosive. And then New Orleans looked like pretenders. I said it last week. I don't think they're legit. The Saints were up 21-10 with in the fourth with about 7 minutes left, and then just let the Giants back in. They're switching quarterbacks between Taysom and Jameis Winston. It's not working. Alvin Kamara had 26 carries and 120 yards, but he had no receptions. He's never been used like that in his life. Alvin Kamara is a receiving back. And then one more point here. Jameis Winston looks serviceable, but not good to me, which is a shock because Sean Payton's at the helm.
See, I'm a firm believer in the saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none.
Yeah, you're right.
So, like, what Sean Payton needs to do with this team is he needs to just pick his guy and stick with him, whether that's Jameis or Taysom. But whoever he picks, he's got to just stick with that guy until one or the other gets injured. You need to just stop with this whole like quarterback who's a receiver sometimes or a quarterback who's just only a quarterback and all this weird stuff. Either put Taysom Hill at wide receiver or put him at quarterback. Don't do one and the other. I'm not a fan of that. The experiment hasn't worked. These guys haven't been able to win. I don't understand what Sean Payton's doing.
So let me ask you this question. Okay. Is there an argument to be said that Sean Payton is not that good of a head coach and he just had his success because he had Drew Brees? That's a question I'm legitimately asking myself. So what do you think on Sean Payton? Do you think he's a good enough head coach to lead them to maybe another Super Bowl or anything like that?
I don't think he is really. Because he's got an elite running back in Alvin Kamara, but his quarterback, I think he needs a good quarterback to be successful, and I don't think he has that right now. I've never been too impressed with what Jameis has to offer, and Taysom Hill, he's either a quarterback or he's not, but you can't just be putting your guy at wide receiver either, too, and expect to win a Super Bowl. It's just not possible. I don't see it. And I don't really see the Saints doing that well this year with the quarterback situation they have.
So again, I'm gonna ask you this one question: do you think Sean Payton is a good head coach? Just right now, yes or no?
No, not without a good quarterback.
There we have it. Well, this is Derek Joseph. Awesome. Thank you very much, Derek, for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
Your ad is Derek Joseph 98. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Awesome, man. Good job. Great job. And thanks for having you.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been the Weekend Wrap-Up with Trevor Junt.